Hello. I expect many of you watching this video are considering a solar or battery solution for your home and are looking for an installer. I went on a similar journey over 12 months ago and thought I'd share my experience of an installer that I finally chose, which at the time was JPS Renewables in Maidstone. They've recently changed their name to the JPS Group, I believe, combining their renewable side and the construction side under one name. Up front, I want to state that I'm no way connected to JPS. They haven't asked me to make this video, and in fact they don't know I was intending to make it. I'm just a homeowner who wanted to share their experience in the hope that it helps someone else. So why did I decide to go down the solar home battery and in what came about, which was the EV route? Well, as you'll remember, in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, energy and petrol prices rocketed. We saw our monthly electricity direct debit rise from £120 to £280, and British Gas, my supplier at the time, want to increase that to £350. Being in a rural location, we didn't have gas and use oil for central heating and hot water. In the past, we'd fill up our 1,300 litre oil tank for around £500 a year. And in June of 2022 we were getting quotes of over £2,000 to fill the same tank. Our monthly petrol bill for the two cars at the time was over £250 a month, and we was covering around 1,200 miles a month. In a nutshell, basically we were spending around £600 a month to power and heat our home and also run two cars. So after doing a lot of research and a lot of reading on the subject, I decided to see whether solar and a home battery solution was a viable option for our property. And I started looking into replacing one of the petrol cars with an EV, as this was a gateway into getting cheaper electric tariffs. And then that way we could load shift our electricity usage to cheap rate periods. So in August of 2022 I contacted four of our local installers. I'm based down in the southeast of Kent, and at this time the whole solar industry was crazy busy, with lots and lots of households making queries and inquiring about solar and battery in an effort to reduce their electricity bills, and consequently solar and battery was in short supply at the time. The world was just recovering from the post-COVID industrial shutdown. Now, out of the four installers that I contacted, two replied. One was using Fox ESS equipment and seemed like a one-man band and didn't actually inspire much confidence, wasn't willing to do a site survey, and basically sort of turned out to be a gas boiler engineer who had branched into renewables. The other was JPS, and I'd read a number of positive reviews about them, and it was clear that they were quite a large business with a dedicated back office to handle administration, a dedicated support team, in addition to sales and installation teams. Now, their sales teams contacted me by phone after my initial inquiry, and we discussed what I was looking to install, and they were able to look up the property, see what the orientation of our roofs was, and if there was likely to be any shading issues, and whether it seemed on the face of it to be viable. And we both agreed that the next step was a home visit to measure up and run through some of the options. So at the beginning of August 2022, JPS came to the property. One of their sales team looked at possible installation options, and our property is a little bit out of the ordinary. We have a detached garage whose roof has an east-west split, and the house faces south, but the roof is also east and west with dormer windows. The east side of our property, both the garage and the main house, is completely obscured and shaded by our neighbour's conifers. So that side of the property just isn't an option. So JPS recommended that we install 10 panels on the west of the garage roof and 3 panels facing south on the west side of our house, but on a particular apex of the roof that actually orientated south. Battery wise, we were offered either a Tesla Powerwall or a Give Energy solution. Now in August 2022, the waiting time for a Tesla Powerwall was at least 12 months. With the Give Energy solution, we could be looking at a January 2023 install. We needed a couple of other bits and pieces. We wanted a Zappi car charger and also an Eddy solar diverter for the hot water. Basically, we could choose either solution. That was entirely up to us. Put down a refundable deposit, but it was explained the installation would be subject to a structural inspection of the roof, both on the house and the garage, just to make sure that that they could take the wind loading and they could take the weight, certainly, especially in the case of the actual garage itself. And also, the installation was subject to a G99 application to their DNO. Now, if either the roof inspection or the G99 prevented the installation for some reason, we would be fully refunded the deposit, less the cost of the structural engineer's roof calculations, which was around £80. So that seems like fairly reasonable to me. So I put in my order, and I was able to make all the payments through credit cards, and you could even split across multiple credit cards, which was fantastically flexible. In our case, we thought, well, rather than sort of like touch our own savings, we took out 3 24-month interest-free credit cards, and that allowed us to get the installation done, but without touching our savings. They stayed in the bank, and then we could just, in the background, just save up and make sure that at the end of the 24 months, we'd covered off the costs of what we'd put onto the credit cards. That works for us, may not work for you. Not providing any financial advice, but it was a level of flexibility that JPS offered that a lot of installers couldn't. So a quick overview of what we actually ordered. It was a 5.4 kilowatt solar array, which, as I say, was split across 2 buildings and mounted on the 2 roofs, and that was with 10 415 watt Jinko Tiger Neo panels on the west face of the gareth roof, and 3 additional 415 watt panels are mounted on the house facing south. On the back of those is a end-phase microinverter, an IQ7 Plus, so we've got 13 of those, and that converts the panel's solar energy, which is in DC, to AC. So we've only got AC currents flowing throughout our property. And the advantage of the microinverters was it allowed us to split the array over 2 buildings, and also it allows us for further expansion of the system quite easily, should we ever get the opportunity to be able to put more solar panels on the east side of our property, subject to the neighbours cutting their trees down, or a change of neighbour who's willing to do that. The home battery solution we chose was a Give Energy AC inverter, the AC 3.0, and that was coupled to 2 8.2 kilowatt batteries. As I say, we also had a Zappi 2.1 car charger installed and an Eddy solar diverter, and the whole installation was covered with bird guards for the solar, and also we took out warranty extensions for the inverter and the My Energy products. So once the deposit was taken, JPS got the process underway. The G99 was submitted, and a day was arranged when 2 engineers would visit the site, assess the property, measure the roof structure, check out the existing electrical supply, fuse board, evaluate options for battery placement in the house or outside of the house, depending on what was more suitable. And having taken a load of roof measurements, they were submitted, as I said, to a structural engineer to ensure the garage roof could take the weight and the loading for the solar panels. The Zappi charger was installed in September of 2022, as we'd just bought our first EV, and we received news shortly after that the G99 had been approved and the roof survey had been given the green light for the solar install. We were then given an installation date of the 10th of January 2023, and scaffolding arrived and was erected a few days before the installation date. The install, we were told, was scheduled to take place over 2 days. And one day was going to be solar, and all the wiring, the CT clamps, the isolators, the boarding for the loft, because that's where we decided it was the best place and most convenient to our house for installation, sort of thing. Our central fuse board and our consumer unit is bang in the middle of the house. It's located in quite an awkward position, and it's quite a small area. So locating the batteries in the loft and the inverter in the loft made a lot of sense for us. It was a lot more simplified the install. Day 2 was going to be the batteries were going to be installed. So day 1 arrived. 2 solar installers arrived on site along with 3 electricians. So we had a team of 5. They worked solidly all day, but it being very early January, by the time the solar was installed and commissioned, it was too dark to actually generate any solar energy. On day 2, 2 battery engineers arrived, installed and commissioned the give energy equipment, and by the time the hardware was installed, the commissioning had been started in the late afternoon, but due to the fact that we had 16.4 kilowatt hours of batteries needing to discharge and charge, it didn't finish until the next day. So once the system had finished commissioning, it became clear that we had a slight issue with the CT clamp monitoring of the system. And the problem we had was that the garage base load was being interpreted as solar generation. And this became very apparent. If we turned on the Zappy and we started to charge the car, that energy was interpreted as solar generation, which obviously then confused the system. And this is where I think, JPS really shine. As rather than having to chase the installer, I was able to contact the technical support team who could remotely see the issue. And they quickly arranged for a senior engineer to visit the site the next day. Now, the engineer arrived the next day. He spent a couple of hours reviewing the installation and decided that the best solution was actually to separate the solar AC generation from the load of the garage and run a separate armoured cable from the house to the garage. The work was booked in for the following week, and then 2 engineers came and they fitted a new cable, reconfigured the CT clamps and other parts of the system, and once completed, the system worked as it should, and JPS just absorbed the extra materials and the labour costs. I never even had to query it. Their primary concern was, let's just deliver a working system. And you might sort of say that's what they should be doing. But there was no fight, there was no back pressure from them, sort of thing. They just got the job done. And it was at this point I'd sort of seen that the system was working as I expected, and I made the final payment. And I think another big tick in the box for JPS is that 2 days after the initial installation, so this is literally sort of like 2 days after, they had on the same day that the engineer had come back to have a look at a few issues, sort of thing, the back office team had sent through our handover pack, and that consisted of my MCS certificate, G99 approval letters, electrical certificates, building regulations, manuals, data sheets for all the components, and a few weeks later they followed up with the MPAN details for setting up export tariffs when they came through. I didn't have to chase them. Everything just arrived in my inbox. It was as simple as that. The technical support team ensured that the warranties were all registered, and we'd taken out extended warranties, and these were activated on the appropriate portals for the My Energy and the Give Energy products. And throughout the whole process, the back office team kept me informed on the progress of the G99 application, the times and estimates for the installation of the actual equipment, and were incredibly helpful with handling payments and any other queries I had. We had a few teething troubles in the first week or two after the installation, but this was never a straightforward single building install. The solar is spread across 2 roofs, as I said, and throughout the JPS staff were just incredibly helpful and incredibly responsive to any queries we had. And the big difference for me, and one of the deciding factors for choosing JPS, was knowing that you have different teams looking after different aspects of the project. And whether that's queries about new products that are coming onto the market with the sales team, I had lots of those. I took up a lot of their time asking about, would we be better off with this battery? What are the advantages of this one? And they were always really responsive and really helpful. The EV charger installation, that was just handled by a dedicated team. They got the job done. That was all fine. They handled all the applying to the DNO. The financing and invoicing team managed all the the step payments, and the fact that we was using multiple credit cards. That was all sorted. Technical support, I say you've got dedicated staff there which you can email, you can ask them questions. And the same with the installation and the after installation support. There was just a team there to always on hand, to be responsive, to give you an answer to any queries you have. You're not chasing one guy around the country. And that was the thing, when I spoke to other installers, it was often the case that the person doing the survey and the quote was the same guy doing the install, the same guy sorting out the paperwork, providing technical support over the phone, having to visit other sites to fix problems on previous installs, and sandwiching new installs in between any query that I happen to have. So at the beginning of this video I talked about why I chose to install solar and battery as a solution for our house, and also make the switch to EVs. And as I mentioned, the costs were running at nearly £600 a month to heat and power the house and drive 1,200 miles in 2 petrol cars. And that was each month. So fast forwarding to April 2024, I can report that JPS originally estimated that our solar would generate 4 megawatt hours annually, and in the first year we generated 4.3 megawatt hours. The switch to EVs and basically changing and charging at home using the Zappi allowed us to switch to smart tariffs like Octopus Intelligent Go, which means we've been charging the Give Energy batteries overnight at 7.5p a kilowatt. And that and those batteries cover our household demands each day, and if I've got any power left in those batteries overnight, that can be exported back to the grid, and I get paid 15p a kilowatt. So in December of 2023, so you've got very low solar generation. You're pretty much drawing everything from the grid, but heating our house, powering the house, covering 1,400 miles. We'd increased our mileage and we'd have 2 EVs now. Our total cost for the month was £80. And April 2024, so just a few days ago, covering the same mileage but with more solar being exported, it's a bit brighter out there, our energy bill has reduced to £45 a month. So that's everything. That's covering all our electricity, all our miles, the lot. Our average price per kilowatt, because we are load shifting so much, is pretty much the 7.5p. That's what we're paying. So since making the switch to EVs and also the system that's been installed by JPS, it means we're saving, based on today's petrol prices and today's electricity prices, which have obviously come down a lot since 2022, we're still making savings of around about £450 a month, having gone down this route. Now our system back in 2022 cost us £20,100, and you might sort of think, wow, that's a lot for what you got. But remember, back then prices went through the roof. Equipment was in short supply, installers were in short supply. It's not that you can't compare the hardware costs back then with what you could go out and get for that kind of money now. But based on the savings we're currently making, the system will have paid for itself in just over 3.5 years. And before anyone sort of says, oh, what about the cost of the EVs? We sold both our petrol cars and bought EVs for the same money. So we effectively swapped petrol for EV. So we sold a Suzuki Vitara and a Citroen Berlingo for a Kia Soul EV and an MG ZS EV. Both used vehicles, but we was able to just make the swap, and we've reaped the benefits ever since. So in summary, would I recommend JPS? Absolutely. I wouldn't have any doubts about that. If I have any work that I want done in the future, I will call them back. It's as simple as that. If I want to extend the system, I will be in touch with them. And investing in solar and battery storage and switching to EVs, it's the best financial decision I've ever made. I hope you found this video useful. If you've got any comments or queries, or you want to know a bit more about some particular aspect of the system, leave a comment. Otherwise, I hope that helps you on your own personal solar and battery, maybe EV journey.